Thank you. So I motion that we skip the talk and go straight to the beer. So it's good to see that some of you are familiar with Lean Startup Principles. Another announcement, if your startup is lean, if you're practicing the Lean Startup Principles and you have some interesting examples to share, like the examples I will be sharing tonight, come talk to me. I'd love to have you talk at the next meetup. So that's me. I'm Andre. Brian already introduced me. I organize the Miami Lean Startup Circle. I also organize the Android, South Florida Android Developers Group. And I have a company called New Frontier Nomads, and what we do is we build amazing mobile apps for startups. And I want to share a few quotes with you that are going to set the tone for tonight's talk. This is by Reid Hoffman, the guy who started LinkedIn, from his new book. And, can you read that? Can everybody read that? Let's see if I can turn these lights down. There we go. Better? So that says, actions and not plans generate lessons that help you test your hypotheses against reality. And on a similar note, I like this one. I have no idea who this is by, but it says, the difference between theory and practice is smaller in theory than it is in practice. Right? I don't know how many of you have had an idea for over 6 months to a year and haven't really gotten very far with it. How many of you know somebody who is like that, right? So the reason why I like these quotes is they encourage you to just sort of do something, learn something, and you're not going to learn by thinking about it, right? So that's sort of what Lean Startup is all about, right? Lean Startup for me is two things. Thing number one, the important thing, is it's a mindset, right? It's a mindset that says, I am wrong, I can be wrong, and so I need to test these assumptions that I have, right? And it's also a mindset that says that you need to do that as quickly as possible. I'm going to illustrate why in a second. The second thing that it is, it's a set of tools that help you test your assumptions, validate your ideas, if you will. So here's a few quotes that illustrate the mindset, right, or the reason for that mindset. Number one is by the guy who wrote this book, Ash Maurya. And he says, most startups fail, and of the startups that do succeed, more than 2/3 of them have drastically changed their plans along the way. Now, what does that mean to you? Well, that means that your brilliant idea that you've been sort of building up in your head is likely wrong, and it likely needs to change quite a bit before it's successful, right? And here's a quote that maybe drives the point home a little bit better. Startups that succeed are those that manage to iterate enough times before running out of resources. Those that manage to test enough ideas before running out of resources. So the mindset is, one, that your idea is wrong. Your idea as it is today is not going to succeed, and that it needs to change. And the mindset number two is that you have to be fast about how you test and validate and change and morph your idea. So the thing I'd like to do next is basically just take 3 of the startups that we've worked with and use their examples to illustrate some of the tools that I mentioned in this Lean Startup Toolbox. And the first one is a local startup called TagMe. They started at a local startup weekend, I believe it was. And the original idea was a little NFC sticker that a retailer can put in their store. Let's say it's a dress or a pair of shoes. And a customer walking into the store can tap that sticker with their smartphone, and their smartphone would automatically like their product on their Facebook page, right? So it's the Facebook like button for the real world. That was the original idea. That was the demo that they knocked out over the startup weekend. And as they worked on the idea, it kind of morphed, right? So some questions came up about, well, how do we make money? Well, we make money by offering services to retailers and having them pay for those, so a bunch of additional stuff came out. Things like recommendations. We helped the retailer drive purchase of other maybe higher margin items, deals and discounts, right? Loyalty programs, customer insights or analytics, people who buy at your store also buy this product that you don't carry, maybe you should carry it, right? So it just grew into this huge thing that sounded great, right? I mean, you have to make money somehow, and those things seem like something that retailers might want to pay for. So I want to ask you, would you join the startup? How many of you would join the startup as it is described? Some of you. Who of you who wouldn't join it? Why not?
Because you can get better data than that from other services that are already being there, like Nielsen, Vegas Canada. They get every point of sale in
Okay.
the U.S. and Canada. So
Okay.
you can already get that.
Anybody else?
NFC adoption is not a lot.
Great, brilliant point.
Yeah, I would say people will actually do that.
You have no idea whether people want the Facebook button for the real world.
Easy to replicate, and you can just replicate ADM.
Low barriers to entry. Okay. So a few of these things really stick out to me. So you basically said there's better data out there. You know, I'm going to rephrase what you said, and I'm going to claim that you said that retailers are not going to pay for this, and because they have
Some
other.
are paying for this, and
Right.
lots of money for that.
So that's assumption number one, is that retailers are going to pay for this, and there's other reasons why they might not want to pay for it, right? In addition to they already have this data, you know, why would they go with you? Other assumptions that I thought were really good. Who wants a Facebook button for the real world? I mean, you know, some people do, and some people don't, and I don't know how many people really do. NFC adoption, right? So of the people who want the Facebook button for the real world, how many of them have NFC on their phones? I'm a mobile developer, and neither of the two phones that I have on me have NFC, right? So that's problematic, right? So there's some crucial assumptions here that, right, that may make the startup fail, right? And so the problem, the way I verbalize it, the problem with the plan for this startup, as it stands on the previous slide, is that it's a ton of work to implement it, and it may not work. So what we ended up doing is, much like the questions that I asked you guys, we ended up sort of trying to prioritize the assumptions according to risk. So which of our assumptions are going to make or break the business, and according to the amount of unknown, right? So NFC adoption, there's some data that we can get there, right? But whether users want to use a Facebook-like button for the real world or not, it's kind of unknown to us, and right. So we thought that was the highest risk assumption, right? In order to sell an analytics engine to a retailer, a meaningful percentage of their customers must use the product, right? Because if you're basing your data on 0.001% of your users, you know what's you know this analytics engine that you spend 6 months building becomes a overpriced way to showcase how poorly your product is performing, right? Your Facebook like button, how little people use it. So the most important assumption is that putting this out will result in some meaningful percentage of engaged users that's meaningful enough to build an analytics engine off of it and to try to sell it. And then the second and most important assumption was that retailers are going to let you put this in their store and that they might pay you for it. And so we've come full circle, you know, with the product. It started as just a simple Facebook like button for the real world, and then it sort of evolved into this huge thing, potentially huge company. So we designed a minimum viable product for them, and let me quote Eric Ries to explain what a minimum viable product is. It is the version of a new product that will allow a team to collect the maximum amount of validated learning about customers with the least amount of effort. So what's the smallest step that we can take to get some knowledge about these assumptions that we are afraid could make or break our business, right? How do we find out if enough people have NFC in their phones, or if they want to use a Facebook-like button for the real world? How do we find out if a retailer will allow us to put this into their store, right? So what's the simplest thing that we can do?
Go out and ask them.
What was that? Somebody said survey?
Go out and ask them.
Go out and ask them. Go out and ask the retailers. Go out and ask the users. So we did. We went out and asked some users. There was some validation as far as people wanting to actually share good deals that they find or share really cool things that they find. We talked to a few store owners as well, and there was some signals of interest, and then a few of them agreed to have a pilot in their stores. And so the next step was this. It's a simple sticker with a QR code and an NFC chip. Those are now 20 cents a piece, right? 5 of them per store into we're starting with like 5 local stores, going to expand to 10 local stores. And this is the mobile page, the same mobile page that they built in that first startup weekend, right? And so no app, nothing in addition. It was redesigned to look a little bit nicer than it looked at the end of that startup weekend. Otherwise, it's that same mobile page. So no additional work. And it's got 3 things. It's got a QR code, it's got an NFC chip, and it's got a handwritten bit.ly URL. And they're going to track how many people scan the QR code, how many people scan the NFC chip, how many people type in the URL. And between the 3, they're going to see if there's enough meaningful engagement to warrant any additional building of stuff, or or not. So the goal of this MVP and the goal of an MVP in general is to just measure the baseline metrics, right? So there's some metrics that are important to you. In this case, we said it's the percentage of the foot traffic that comes to a store that ends up liking something on Facebook, right? That's an important metric. So there's some goals in the business plan that if they're not hit, then you cannot sell an analytics engine off of it and things like that. So the goal of an MVP is to just tell you where you are today, right? Given your current design, your current features, your current positioning, the current storage policy that you've chosen, here's the percentage of users that actually engage with your product. And then after the MVP, the goal is to move those numbers to where they need to be in order for your business to be a success, whatever you decided in your business plan, right? So for them, they said if 1% of the foot traffic engages with the product, then we can build an analytics engine. That's enough for meaningful sort of analysis. So, and how would you move these metrics towards goals? Well, you can change your sticker, you can change the colors, you can change the button, you can run an A/B test, you can change the app, you can change how you call out for it, you can do whatever kinds of things intuitively you think might make a difference, and then you measure whether they actually move the needle, right? And after a while, if they're not moving the needle, then you pivot. And the pivot is just a change in plan. So in their case, that might mean instead of selling an analytics engine, we're going to sell this as a free marketing tool, right? It's going to remain a Facebook-like button for the real world. And if less than 1% of people actually like things on Facebook, that's okay. Because first of all, the retailer's probably not paying attention, and second of all, that may be enough because you're not trying to do customer insights based on a very small percentage of your users. Any questions or comments about this product? Yeah.
How are they tracking foot traffic into the store?
They ask the retailer. They just ask the retailer.
They can measure that with cameras automatically, like the retailers.
Sure. Possibly. The retailers have a pretty decent idea of. Right. I'm not sure where they have the numbers, but they seem to have a pretty decent idea of what their foot traffic is.
What was the time frame to do that? To measure?
The time frame to collect the data?
Yeah.
So actually, the pilot is not even in the stores yet. So we'll see. I guess very quickly you're going to know, right? So you know what the foot traffic is. So you know approximately how many sort of test subjects you have, and you'll see what the conversion rate is fairly quickly. But I don't know if in their plan they have a number of foot traffic, like out of 10,000 people that saw our sticker or that walked into the store while the sticker was displayed. There's a way to calculate what number will be statistically significant, but I don't think that they've done that.
Currently, where are they now in terms of this development and things like that?
They're waiting on me to print the stickers. That's my task, and they're going to start hitting the pavement and deploying it to the stores that already agreed, and finding other stores that are willing to accept them. Cool. How many of you like NDAs? Freaking love them. So I had to fictionalize this particular startup a bit because it's under NDA. But I'm going to call it Eventify, and I'm going to explain. The reason why I'm telling you that it's fictionalized is because when I explain the idea, you might think it's stupid, and it probably isn't because I came up with it on the fly just to, it's similar enough to what the real idea is, so that the principles stand, but it's not the real idea, right?
So we can run with it, basically, is what you're saying.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, if you want to steal it, go ahead.
Steal is an ugly word.
If you want to expand on it. if you want to make it yours. Eventify. It's a fictional startup. It's a fictional service that that lets you organize sort of events or parties on the fly. So let's say tonight there's a Heat game. I know nothing about sports, so I'm probably wrong. Let's say there's a Heat game tonight, and there is. Awesome.
One for one. One for one.
So let me rewind. So tonight there's a Heat game, and let's say you wanted to watch that game with a bunch of people who are into basketball. I'm not going to be there.
Ooh, 2 for 2.
Yeah, I knew that it was basketball. That was pretty good. So you would use this service. You would say, okay, I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch the Heat game tonight with some beers, and I want to do it in this general area. So the app would select a venue for you. It would collect a large enough number of people that are interested in the same thing, and it would book the venue for you automatically, send out a notification to everybody where to show up, and charge everybody, right? So it's kind of like, it has an element of Kickstarter, right? Because everybody's chipping in to make this thing happen, but it's an element of Meetup.com, but it's sort of ad hoc and real time and fast, right? So that's not the real idea, but it's close enough to the real idea that I can illustrate. That I can use to illustrate the examples. So when this startup approached us, they already had organized 5 of these events, and they made money on most of them, right? And so that's what's called concierge MVP, right? So instead of building an app or building a product, you go and you approach people in person and you say, look, I'm going to do this service for you for free, or I'm going to charge you a little bit for it, but I'm going to do it manually just to see. You do this just to see if enough people feel that there is value in that service itself. And if there is, then you can build a product around it, right? So they organized 5 of these parties or events, and they had a large enough turnout that they were profitable. So they had a limited budget, and they wanted to now turn this concept into a real product, into a real app. And here's what they sort of planned for their initial offering, for their initial MVP, right? So, yeah, self-organizing ad hoc events, that would be the description of the product, right? And you can find events, and you can create new ones if they don't exist. And you can invite your friends. You can have private events that are just for your friends, or you can have public events that are for anybody. It figures out the discounting algorithm intelligently based on the number of people that are showing up and the venue capacity and things like that. It would automatically schedule the venue for you when a certain threshold is met. If the number of people who signed up exceeds the venue, it would split into 2 smaller venues that are nearby automatically, and it would intelligently figure out which people go to which venue based on like social network affiliation. It would handle payment processing automatically. It would be available on iPhone and Android, and a mobile web app for all the other platforms, and by the way, desktop web app, right? Wow. That's a lot of freaking work, right? Oh, and did I mention that they had a limited budget? As if there was any other kind of budget. So there were a couple of things that were particularly difficult about what they wanted to build, right? So they had some AI stuff there where if your group exceeds the size of the venue, then split it into 2 smaller groups intelligently based on social network affiliation and demographic information and previous attendance of events and ratings. Oh, I didn't mention ratings. So that's kind of hard. That payment processing and automatic venue scheduling. How do you even automatically schedule a venue? Like the venue would have to have some kind of API, or I don't know, or you use Tropo to make an automatic phone call, and I don't know. I don't know how you would automate scheduling of a venue, right? And so what we suggested to them is let's build the stuff that's easy, which is create an event, search for events, right? Sign up for an event, and let's just the stuff that's hard, you do it. Like I'll send you an email. This guy is signed up. Go ahead and charge his credit card. You have enough people. Go ahead and book the venue. Pick up the phone. A live person. Pick up the phone. Book the venue. Right? Or you have too many people that want to go to the same venue. Now you have to find 2 venues and split the group. Do it manually, right? But it's time that becomes a pain point where there's so much stuff that you can't keep up with the manual work. Well, then it's time to automate, right? That's a good problem to have. First you hire a few sort of low cost people to help you with it, and in the background you then build a product that automates it, right? So that's a Wizard of Oz MVP, where you have something that looks like it's doing all these things, but really there's a person in the back struggling to keep up. And so in a couple of weeks, you build a simple little app, and you can start learning about what people really want. You can start building the brand, demonstrating some traction, making money, and then you scale when it becomes too painful. Any comments or questions about that?
What were they actually charging for?
They were charging for, well, so the venue, to pay for the venue, right? You're splitting the cost. Again, remember that it's fictionalized, so it's not really venues, but you would be paying for a venue.
Does the real version of this product actually exist?
Yeah, well, it's in the works. There is a real startup. There's a real startup, and it's actually much cooler than this half-assed example. You'll have to trust me on that. Yes.
Where are they now?
Working on their first sort of MVP, right? Just about to get started. Waiting on us to become available. That is where they are. So this is again slightly fictionalized, right? I'm going to call it Pocket Lawyer. It's basically, I mean, it's exactly what it is, except replace lawyer with something else. Car mechanic, not really. So you know, it's an app that we were approached by a client from California and his business partner from New York, and they identified this app on the marketplace that had pretty decent traction. It was a premium app. It was selling for $5 on both the Apple App Store and the Android marketplace, and it had decent traction. And they had some ideas on how to make it better, easier, simpler, and also they wanted to make it free. And that's what we built for them. Right, so in this case, the market validation was done for them by somebody else. There was already somebody who had built a product that satisfied a certain need in the market, and they were making money, and so they said, okay, let's do a free version, and we're going to sell some additional features. So they wanted to monetize right away. So they wanted to just build a free version, put it out there with some free features already. But they didn't really know what free features they want. They had some ideas. And this was one of their ideas, that they were going to put this free app out there that people already use and like, and they were going to charge for questions, right? They were going to sell you, I don't know, 10 questions for $100, where you can ask your attorney, you ask an attorney a question, and they respond to you directly from within the app. And so it would be a premium in-app purchase. It would be a premium feature in-app purchase, and the way it was sort of the way it would need to be done, it would double the cost of the actual MVP. So what we did for them to duplicate the premium app and make it free, they would have had to spend an equal amount of money to add this premium feature. And that didn't feel right to me, because how do you know that this is what people are going to want to pay for? I identified, you know, in like a half an hour of brainstorming, I identified 5 other potential things that could be premium features in this app that people may or may not want to pay for. And so, you know, and there's some assumptions here. First of all, there's assumptions that people are going to want to use your free app the way it's built, right? And so you're going to have some base of users to try selling to. That's assumption number one. And okay, I can be convinced that we don't need to validate that, because there is existing competition and they're making money and people are using them, and right. And we built the app, so we know it's going to be better, right? So, and then the second assumption, and this is the one that really bothered me, is some percent of features are going, some percent of users are going to want to pay some amount of money for that feature that you designed, right? You don't know that, and you're about to spend $20,000, $30,000 to test that, and there's a quicker way, right? And that faster way is a smoke test, right? So it took us literally a month to convince them not to give us $30,000, and instead to give us $1,000 to put 3 or 4 sort of fake callouts for buy this feature or buy that feature. And here's what they look like, right? Can you read that? So there's a button in the app that says Ask the Attorney. When you click that button, it says Ask the Attorney is a premium feature. You can ask, you know, it sells it as if it would if it really existed, right? It tries to convince you to buy it. There's 3 buttons with 3 different price points. You can buy 10 messages for 99 cents. That's very low for an attorney.
I don't even charge my wife that.
Yeah. For a mechanic, still pretty low. But anyway, so you have 3 different price points, and we can experiment with price points actually. 10% of the users can see one price point, 10% of the users can see a whole different price point. And we built this kind of a smoke test for 3 or 4 different things inside of the app. And so within a week or 2, depending on how quickly the app is adopted, we're going to know exactly what feature people are clicking on buy for 99 cents, right? Which feature people are willing to pay money for. And it might be the $3,000 feature, not the $30,000 feature, right? And we're also, not only are we going to know which feature people want to pay for, if any, we're also going to know how much they want to pay for it, right? Because we're running this A/B test with different pricing. Questions about that?
Did you show each of the customers the same list of options or like multiple features?
No. So yeah, everybody's gonna see a different. Well, there's gonna be a multivariate test where we're gonna vary the features and we're gonna vary how they're describing and we're gonna vary the price points.
I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but how would the compensations, that or the revenue being generated from the application, relate to the compensations that these lawyers are going to be receiving?
So again, it's fictional, and so it's not really ask the attorney; it's ask the something else.
Okay.
The company has their own attorney on staff. They pay a person to go through the messages and answer them. That's how it works.
I'm just curious. You have these buttons that say buy this service, buy that service for different prices, right? But there's no functionality behind them, but you released it to the market. So what happens when they actually click on it?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, the app is functional. The app by itself is an awesome free app that offers all of the functionality that the competition already offered and people were paying for free. Now, these are additional features that appear as if they were existing premium features, but when you click the 99 cents button, so here's your question. What happens when you click the 99 cents button? What happens is we tell you, thanks for your interest. We are trying to figure out what to build next, and so you've just helped us. And as a reward, we're going to give you 10 free credits when we launch. That's what happens. So we do it in kind of, and actually I kind of agonized over that. I'm like, I'm tricking people here, and I don't know how they're going to react. And I'm trying to bribe them, that's one, but also I'm being very transparent about what we just did, why we did it.
I guess you're still working on it, but what are the chances of that making it past the iOS app approval?
That's a great question. So the App Store guidelines say that you cannot, in your App Store listing, claim that you have functionality you don't really have. And in the App Store listing, we are not going to show any screenshots that say anything about ask an attorney. Remember, the app is standalone and functional on its own. But so you think that they might have an issue with the smoke test?
Yeah, with it appearing that they can buy additional functionality, complete with the button, pay this much money for this much feature, but in the end it doesn't actually do it.
Well, if that thing.
Well, so we don't charge them, by the way.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I know you're not actually charging.
It's a
I'm
business
just-
model. So that's great. I mean,
I don't think you're necessarily doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
but it's Apple that we're talking about, so
Yeah,
so
what
who
the
knows?
approval person will think.
The-
So we'll find out. But
Because it doesn't appear right away, and they show like after a little bit of use, they will never know.
Oh, okay. Slip it in under the
we might actually. So that's interesting. We might actually want to turn it off, like remotely via server, just like hide that button completely.
You could also just like, for example, if you are in a key that is around Cupertino, you turn it off. You'll never know. Okay, let me write this down and commute it to everybody. Hold on.
I'm glad I fictionalized the app. Apple will never know.
What the feedback I'm guessing is going to come in the form of ratings and comments in the stores, the iOS store, the Android store,
The feedback regarding
regarding the app, how well it's going.
just the app itself, or the.
Well, in general, the feeling about the app as a whole. My question is, how are you monitoring, or how do you integrate the comments and ratings of the app into the process?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do monitor comments and reviews, but we do something actually beforehand. We solicit for feedback inside of the app in a way that we can respond to and ask for clarification. And I've just gone through a round of sort of evaluating the tools that are out there, and what I'm going to experiment with next is TestFlight. They have their SDK can now be used in live apps. Other questions? Yeah, and then the feedback as far as how well the smoke test is doing, which features people are trying to buy. We just collect that data using Flurry. We just submit it to Flurry, drop in the SDK, generate a custom event, and it has information about whether they said, yes or no, I want to buy it. We have information that somebody has seen it. Out of the people who have seen it, how many of them actually bought it, and what was the price point?
Is there some process in place if an early iteration gets a bunch of bad ratings and bad comments and bad reviews, and you say, oh, this didn't work, can you change the name of the app and try again?
I've never been in that position, honestly. So actually, I've had apps that have gotten bad ratings for a specific reason, and we've just addressed the reason. I haven't yet launched an app that didn't have overall just good adoption and decent reviews. So just iterating, tweaking a little bit. By the way, every time you submit an app to the App Store, the average reviews sort of restart. So every new release is a chance of getting a better average rating. Anyone else? That's it. Thank you, guys. What's that? Yeah, does anybody have any questions that don't have to do with these examples? Yes.
So for anyone who is implementing the lean startup concept, we all face the same problem. And the problem is the following. How do you decide, where do you draw the line between the features that are going to be part of the MVP and which ones are going to be? There are some stuff that if you don't put in there, you're crippling your chances, you're crippling your app. So, and that's a fine line. Can you share some of your team's experiences, going through that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to be a smart ass, and I'm going to say that a minimum viable product needs to be both minimal and viable, right? But that doesn't really answer your question real quick. So what's viable, right? You can start off. So I guess the first thing that you would do before you're building a minimum viable product is you're going to talk to your customers, right? And I didn't even talk about that at all, other than the concierge MVP, right? But before you set out to build something, I hope that you have talked to at least 10, 20, 30 people about the problem that you're trying to solve, and then after that, about the proposed solution that you have to that you think you have to that problem, right? And so through that process, you're not going to have to rely on your gut necessarily, but because through that process, people are going to tell you what they think is viable, right? You can even take wireframes, the wireframes that you have for your product, and you can, in your solution interview, you can say, what do you think about this? Does that solve that problem that we talked about last week? So that's my opinion.
Anybody have any other questions?
Do you have any advice for how to sell the concept of the approach to a client who, say, is incredibly antagonistic and thinks the entire thing is BS and wants everything up front? Are there any advice for how to approach a client who is buying into the program?
So this is probably the thing that I've been dealing with the most lately is like I said, convincing people not to give me money, right? I'm still not sure that's a good thing for my business, but the smoke test that I showed you, it took me literally 1 month, one calendar month to convince this client, back and forth via email, phone calls, to convince this client not to build this feature now. First of all, first problem is they really think that they know what's going to sell. They're like, no, I know that this is going to work. How do you know? Well, I just know. Right? And so I had to wear that down. I had to sort of inject a little bit of doubt into their little worldview there that they're I don't know what word to use here, so I'm going to skip it. And just statistics, right? So how many of you have you heard the 1 in 20 number, that only 1 in 20 new startups succeed, right? And that's startups that have actually sort of, started, right? How about ideas? That's going to be, what, 1 in 50, 1 in 100? So, so luckily I have this body of literature, the lean startup movement, and I don't necessarily use the brand to sell our services, but I definitely use the messaging, right? So the quotes that I gave you at the beginning, which is most startups fail, and the ones that don't, the ones that succeed, look drastically different than what they looked like when they started. I've told that to these clients, to other clients. So that's one. The number two is fear of competition, sort of seeing your smoke test and figuring out what you're doing and then doing it before you do it, right? Stealing your ideas. And that one was easy for me to sort of talk back to because, okay, so they're testing, let's say 5 features. The competitor sees those 5 features. Well, first of all, they have this free app that's getting the traffic that they can use to test the features in the first place. That's something that they have that the competitor doesn't have. But let's say, competitor can replicate that overnight. They only know that these people are testing these 5 ideas. They have no data on how those are doing, right? So you have a $3,000 feature, series of $10,000 features and a $30,000 feature, which is really sexy. The competitor might copy the $30,000 feature, but the people might be clicking on the $3,000 feature. So, right, those are the words that I used with this client, and that's how they convinced, how I convinced them to finally agree to a smoke test. But it's a struggle, right? And even though we do try to position the company to attract people who are already interested in lean, even people who are interested in lean are very hesitant to putting something out there that's not pixel perfect and everything that they want it to be. So if anybody has other ideas on how to convince people to be lean, let me know.